Podcasting from Hartford, you're listening to the Connecticut Scoreboard Podcast.
All right, it's summertime. If you're like me, now's the time you really catch up on your reading. And we've got an author of a book I really enjoyed, Nick Greene, joining us. How to Watch Basketball Like a Genius is the book. Nick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know in Connecticut, we're a college basketball junkie state. We like our basketball, so we like to probably think we're already watching basketball like a genius, but this book is a great follow-up for anyone who thinks they might be a genius.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's for geniuses, non-geniuses. As a non-genius myself, I can attest to the fact that you don't have to be a genius to enjoy it, I don't think.
So Nick, as I started reading the book, I was just fascinated by the people you were talking to get some perspectives on basketball. Take us through how the idea for this book came about and how you decided who to reach out to talk to for it.
Yeah, I had done a series with Slate, right? I talked to experts in sort of random fields about this was actually LeBron James's free agency decision back before he joined the Lakers. And it was sort of a jokey, fun little series. But in doing it, I actually found myself having just a great time talking to these people about basketball and surprising myself at how much I could learn from them about how they watched the game. So I sort of expanded it to include, just views on the game itself, its history. And writing the book, I started to research its history and go through, the early days with Naismith getting his class of incorrigibles to basically stop beating each other up during a hard Western Massachusetts winter, to present day basketball. And I thought, this is, such a fascinating history and a fascinating sport that I wanted to get as many perspectives on it as I could. And you asked, how I went about choosing these people and finding these people. It really was trial and error and just being curious and reaching out and seeing who might have some interesting stuff to say.
What were their reactions when you'd reach out to them? Because I feel like, if you call like a magician out of the blue, or someone associated with the ballet and are like, we want to talk basketball with you. What was the reaction when you posed that to them?
Surprise, usually. A lot of people would, their first reaction would be that, well, I won't be of any help. This isn't my field of expertise. But, it didn't take long to sort of just shoot the shit with them about basketball and know that they were comfortable talking about basketball. And I think they're also, these are very smart people, accomplished people in their own field. So getting to talk to them about what they do and what they find interesting and not just basketball, but, kind of these sort of satellites floating around them as well. That was something that I found very telling and enriching
definitely.
to the story, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go through, because there were a couple ones I think that had a few ties to Connecticut here that we could talk to that I thought were a lot of fun. And
Sure.
I think probably the most obvious one, and it brought a smile on my face when I opened up the chapter on it, and that's free throws. And that's with one of UConn greats, Andre Drummond. Gets a nice shout out in the book here in talking about his free throw woes. I know, we got to witness some of those firsthand here at UConn, seeing him play, and those were kind of during the early days in college, and you saw those issues persist through the NBA. And I remember I was at one of the open practices, and I remember they had like 2 or 3 coaches working with him on free throw form, and I was just shocked by it. It was like, this guy is huge. He's a monster. Like, he could put back dunks like anything. But he struggled with free throws. And you think a guy.
Yeah, well, sorry, I didn't use Ray Allen as my example. I think that would have been maybe kinder to UConn.
But take us through. I mean, there were just some things I found fascinating around the free throw, debate, so to call it, that you talk about in the book. Some of the different variables around free throw shooting, and then we could talk a little bit about my favorite topic of whether or not these guys should shoot underhand, the ones that struggle.
Yeah, it's so interesting because free throws are such a such a different part of the game. It's the only time the game really grinds to a halt. It's the only real time when, a person's teammates will never be there to bail them out. And inversely, the opponents will never be there to actually play defense on them. It's sort of this little science experiment, just because it's stayed the same since the game's earliest days. Basketball is not like baseball. It embraces change. That's so much what the book is about, is how it's changed and why it's changed. It's changed so much, but free throws have remained the same. So you really are able to look at them as some sort of fascinating experiment. And the fact that in the NBA and college, free throw percentages, by and large, haven't changed at all.
Yeah.
They hover around, I believe it was 70% in the NBA and a little bit below that in the college game. And, kind of approaching it like a experiment, I found these dynamicists, physicists from NC State who had done lots of studies on free throws, for fun, because they have better things to do with their jobs. But they love basketball. And so I talked to them about their findings, and they found the perfect, the hertz and the angles and the speed at which the ball should be released. They found the exact perfect free throw, sort of all the data and variables. But the one sort of thing that always you can't count on is the person taking them.
Right.
It's such a mental thing, and the most important thing is when it comes to form, they seem to think is not to find a quote unquote perfect form, but to find the form that the individual player can replicate with the most consistency.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun topic, because you're always
I'm curious to ask you though, when you were watching Drummond working with those coaches, do you remember if he was hitting his free throws, the majority of his free throws during that period?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I would say it was probably. Oh, I'm trying to remember. All I can remember is seeing, like, there were like 2 or 3 coaches. Like, they had one guy like holding his back in a position, like one guy trying to like work on his elbow location. I do recall like him being able to make some of them, at least. I remember from that, but I just remember it was crazy. I'm like, this guy's a star. Like, he's going to be a lottery pick when he goes next year. And you hear there are like 3 coaches working on the side with him on free throw shooting.
And it's amazing to think, how bad his career free throw percentage is in the pros, but for how bad it is, it's a minor miracle that it's gotten as high as it is, because his first years were historic. I mean, beyond historic. So it's kind of you can look at him as I don't like to look at him, and I don't think I did look at him as an example of failure. I quite the opposite. I thought it was he was a good example of that you can improve your free throws, but just how difficult it can be.
Yeah, and I think you had a line in the book that, like, the game where he set a record for worst free throw percentage in a game, it actually raised his overall free throw percentage.
Yeah, he had I think he shot something in the high 20s of numbers of free throw attempts that game, and he made almost none, but it was still better than he was averaging. The stuff is mind-boggling when it comes to him, and I think it's you look at him now and you can watch how his form has evolved, and it can't help by going from different coaches to different coaches and changing your form constantly, which he's been doing. But I mean, he's around 50% now, and that's. I think he should stop what he's doing and just take it. That's good enough.
Exactly. And then I think what's so interesting is we've seen like both ends of the spectrum at UConn, because when they won their last title in 2014, the team averaged like 90% from the line. I think it was John Calipari who was like, it's not even worth fouling him at the end of the game because it doesn't do anything. Like, just let him dribble it out. So it's amazing to see the discrepancies in what happens when you have someone who can barely shoot 50% compared to a team that could shoot 90% from the line. And the difference it makes in a game is just fascinating.
Yeah. What do you think are more interesting? Great free throws or terrible free throws?
Oh, That's a good one. Like if you're looking for entertainment, like the bad ones are the ones that like always like really like just take your breath away. You're like, wow, like he didn't even hit the rim on that. Like
there's a little the sort of macabre, thing that people say about watching NASCAR, watching it for the crashes.
Yeah.
When someone like Steph Curry or Ray Allen would get sent to the line, you could be forgiven if you check your phone, given they're going to make those 2 free throws. But when Andre Drummond gets sent to the line, that's when Giannis gets sent to the line. That's must-see TV.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, especially these NBA playoffs, it's just been, like, blowing my mind. It's like, Giannis is this, like, all-NBA MVP player and, can't make his free throws. And you, like, see him at the line and his game just falls apart completely.
Yeah. Although I do think it was, that the Scottie Pippen interview recently where he mentioned that Giannis clearly doesn't care about missing his free throws because he throws himself down the lane, which is true. I mean, you gotta give him credit. He may be terrible at them, but at least he's very okay with the prospect of shooting them.
Yeah. And what did you think of the part in your book that again just cracked me up too? Is the idea of the underhanded free throws? I feel like there's a story every few years where it's like so-and-so is going to try it out for a game or something, and that's it. Like, is it something you think should be seen a little bit more from players out there?
Yeah, so when I talked to the physicists about it, and they'd done lots of study, and their sort of take and their conclusions about it were interesting. And they said that the underhand free throw is not inherently more accurate. In fact, that the overhand free throw, when done perfectly or done as good as it can be done, is a better motion. The thing that the underhand free throw has going for it is there's basically only one motion. It's very pendular. It's extremely hard to mess up. You don't have to worry about hitches in your elbow and how it comes off your palm or fingers, that kind of stuff. It's a very straightforward, easy to replicate form of shooting. So, yeah, I mean, Wilt Chamberlain did it briefly, which I mentioned in the book, and he his free throw percentage skyrocketed, but he stopped because he said it made him look like a sissy. Shaq wouldn't even consider trying it. It's a kind of thing that eventually someone will, a big star will do it. Yeah. You just think it's going to happen. Big star since Rick Barry. And I think the fact that Rick Barry was such a divisive and hated player amongst his peers really didn't help the underhand free throw take, popularity.
Yeah, no, agreed. I want to talk while we're on shooting. I think one thing I've been fascinated because I hadn't heard of the story before, and that's the team over at Grinnell that just jacks up threes. Take us through what it was like to talk to the coach there a little bit more about his system and what it was like, because you always feel like for the past, I don't know, I remember just looking back and you'd see scores. ESPN would have a story on them like every year when they put up just a crazy number of points in a game. But it's just such an interesting story to me, and it's such an interesting concept that he has there to really just jack threes the whole game.
Yeah, they do a lot of crazy things, but the three-pointer is, their reliance on it was what interested me the most, because, they started doing this in the late 80s, early 90s. Their sort of strategy when it came to three-pointers is what you see the Rockets doing, or doing back when Daryl Morey was sort of their figurehead and in charge. That tactic they were decades ahead of their time. And I spoke with the inventor of, they call it the system, the coach, the longtime coach there. And it was so interesting that they had turned it into a sort of mathematical equation, a literal equation that's in the book of how to win games and with three-pointers and pace and everything. But it wasn't the sort of thing you expect analytic minds to. They didn't come to the conclusion to shoot more threes from analytics. It wasn't, they didn't look at the numbers and crunch them and do what the Daryl Moreys and the other kind of quants have done in the NBA. It's what they did was basically the coach didn't have any big guys. He couldn't recruit good forwards or centers. He had a bunch of kids who could shoot, and he thought, well, why don't we just do what we're good at and just shoot all game, shoot long range threes all game because we're not getting inside. And it was a way to sort of not win, but make his players have, feel like they were a part of something and do something different. And it was sort of, he was at the end of his rope. I mean, he was, he didn't know what to do with his career as a basketball coach, and thought, well, we might as well have fun and do what we're good at. And that turned into this system that not only won games, but foreshadowed what basketball would turn into.
Yeah. No, it's such an interesting concept to me. And I have to make it out there and kind of, because I think they're still running the system out there, right?
They are, yeah. And you can watch it on on YouTube. It's not just the threes, it's the platooning. They constantly sub in guys because they're running and they're always trapping. And it makes sense. It's something that you watch any even Division I high level, March Madness quality college basketball teams at that level have trouble with the trap.
Yeah.
So why not just trap always?
Yeah, exactly.
And against Grinnell, teams would figure it out, but so what? They figured it out, but it's too late because they're already raining threes down on them.
Yeah, no. There's another part in the book, and I think it relates here. At UConn, Dan Hurley, the head coach, he just preaches defense. Yeah, you've got a whole bit on defense here, and I think it was an astrophysicist you talked to on defense here and the importance of it. And it was just something that was just so interesting to me. Take us just through a little bit what you learned about the importance of defense and the role that plays. Yeah,
well, the thing that it became clear to me is that good defense is essentially invisible. I think people who are smarter or been with the game longer and think and can look at it more analytically and from that vantage point may have a better sort of understanding of it. But to me, who I'm just a fan who watches a lot of basketball, good defense has always seemed somewhat invisible. I can, it's predictive. It's getting to spots. It's being on a string. It's preventing the other team from doing what they want to do. It is, for lack of a better term, the absence of good offense. Right. You don't see good defense until the offense breaks down. Yeah. It almost looks like bad basketball because they're not letting the offensive half do their part. Right. And so I basically, I reached out to a astrophysicist, this brilliant guy at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, who he's a guy who's in control of the most powerful supercomputer in the world. And he, does all this modeling and mapping of stuff happening in the furthest reaches of the universe. Big Bang, or not Big Bang. So, well, he does some stuff with the Big Bang, but supernovas, things like that that we can't see, but we know is going on. He sort of has to use the data and visualize all the stuff that's happening that we can't see, and chances are we will never see. So he's also a huge basketball fan, and so I just asked him to kind of go through step by step what he sees in his mind when he thinks of good basketball defense. And he had a funny answer that was sort of immediate because he's used to thinking like this, and he said it reminded him of an iridescent turtle shell, sort of all these convexive hexagons and cells circling like the different members of a defensive unit and sort of pushing the offense to the perimeter and keeping it out. And I thought that was fascinating. And it was sort of after he told me that it's how I look at it now too.
There was another part in the defense that was just always cracks me up, and it's a debate we're having all the time in basketball, and that's about flopping. I know you talked to someone else about flopping it and whether or not it's a good thing or not. Well, take us through some of the thoughts that you found out on flopping.
Yeah, so for flopping, I went and talked to a soap opera casting director because, she obviously can tell when someone's faking crying and when they're really doing a good job and meaning it. But she was, it was interesting. She had, her advice to floppers or would-be floppers out there, I think is good, which was to don't make a meal of it. Be subtle, trick yourself into actually thinking that you're going to fall over, which turns out there were studies conducted about flopping that the physics of it is a lot of the times when you see a player fall over, it's genuine. Because just the way that when a person that size is coming at that speed, you're going to fall over. And the thrusting your arms out is a natural response. So as much as we hate flopping, it's something that's going to happen because embellishment is always going to happen, but the embellishment might not always be necessary. So it's sort of a thing that we might never get the best floppers out there are probably the ones that we don't consider floppers.
Interesting there. I know we went through, a few of the different areas that you touch on in the book. I don't want to give it all away because I do want everyone to recommend reading it because I really did enjoy it. But,
thank you.
I'll wrap with this one. From the people you spoke to, did you have a favorite story or point that they brought up about basketball that just like really stood out to you?
I didn't have a favorite. But it was fascinating. I mean, the astrophysicist was a treat, especially because he just had such a clear picture of defense. Exactly what I was asking him. I love talking to a Rube Goldberg designer about teamwork and also how to design basketball plays. And, learning from him was great because I had always assumed, and I think I'm not alone, that Rube Goldberg machines are meticulously planned because they're so intricate and they're so sort of, as I said, intricate, I think is the word to use there. But it turns out they're usually just completely improvised because it's just, he said you dump a bunch of crap on the floor and start building and one thing leads to another. And it mimicked and mirrored what basketball plays often turn into is you have different options. Maybe you'll draw it up one way, but you're not always going to have that option in front of you. Sometimes it works perfectly. We saw the Valley Oop in the NBA playoffs, DeAndre Ayton dunk against the Clippers. That was a play that really had one option, and it either would work and it didn't, or not work and it worked. But otherwise, in the middle of a flow of a game, you'll have the point guard initiating something, and everything sort of flows from there, branching possibilities. And it was very similar to how those crazy Rube Goldberg machines come to be.
Yeah, well, no, that's a fun part there as well. But Nick, I really appreciate the time again. How to Watch Basketball Like a Genius is the book here. Definitely recommend you put it on. We still got a little bit of time left here in summer. Get it on your summer reading, or we've still got some time here in Connecticut before college basketball really gets underway. So you've got plenty of time to get ready for this upcoming season to be able to watch basketball like a genius. So Nick, really appreciate the time and thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.